So welcoming on Dan Carcillo for the reason that I don't know that it'd be possible for us to properly examine the Paul Byron, MacKenzie Weegar situation without somebody who's been through it himself.
Yeah, and we've been meaning to have Dan on for a while, actually.
Seriously. And this is just the perfect way to introduce you. So, Dan, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Hey. Thanks, boys. Appreciate the applause. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's about time, man. Long overdue to have you on. So here's the thing. For anybody that hasn't heard this situation or this story over the last couple of days already, and it really dominated yesterday, but in case you missed it, Paul Byron hits MacKenzie Weegar earlier on in the year, gets a 3-game suspension for it because it was a dirty hit, tweets out that he takes full responsibility and he apologized and he didn't mean to do it. Now the Habs, who cannot score goals, are in the playoff race of their lives, and Paul Byron, who has 15 of the Habs goals, who is 5'9", decides that, hey, I guess I got to fight MacKenzie Weegar to make up for this, to answer the toll, I guess, for what happened earlier on in the season. Now, Paul Byron went down. MacKenzie Weegar, bigger guy, stronger guy.
It was a 3-punch fight.
And Paul Byron now has a concussion, is going to miss this huge game that they have tonight at the very least, and this one's against Columbus. And Dan, I wanted to start with what your initial thoughts on the conversation was, because obviously people were tweeting this at you all day yesterday, and you commented on it. What are your thoughts on what went down?
Well, I mean, that's just, we talk about the code, we talk about hockey culture. That's the epitome of hockey culture right there. Whether MacKenzie wants to do it or not, I kind of explained this in detail yesterday, that Byron has to either fight in that situation or he has to turtle. Like in some of those situations, there was, I've had some of those situations in my career. For example, when I cross-checked Matthew Perreault, I think it was in my last season, I knew that I would have to answer to somebody in Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. And that ended up happening, but that's something that's pretty standard. Even though Byron, I know, got suspended, he was already reprimanded. I just ended up watching the clip before I got on the call, and somebody actually dropped his gloves with him, but he didn't fight immediately after the hit. I know a little bit about him. He's not a malicious player. We actually had a really good exchange. I remember when he did get suspended on Twitter, and we were actually DMing each other, and he doesn't believe that every hit to the head needs to be looked at as intent or malicious, and I don't believe that either. Sometimes there's, I see more accidental hits rather than intent or malice on somebody to try and really hurt someone. That's just not the way the game is taught. The game is taught now, it's a skill game, score more goals, rather than when I played, we were hitting at 4 years old. I'm a 1985 birthday. I'm 34 years old. Mm-hmm. And we were taught to take your opponent's will to play away. That's how we were taught the game. You lean on your opponent for 60 minutes. As soon as he hesitates, you have them. Now, you hear a lot about like the little details, and as soon as somebody hesitates, whether it's a defenseman to go back to the puck or whether it's, somebody on the face-off who just doesn't want to get slashed on the top of the foot again and get in there first, get their nose dirty to win that face-off back, that's how you win. And in my opinion, obviously there's no such thing as an enforcer role now. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, the coach should have probably said something to Paul, just laid something out, some coach, a head coach, an assistant coach, and just said, listen, he's going to come after you. I don't think you need to, I don't know if it's a must-win game for Montreal. It was in Montreal, correct?
Yes, and it was. Any game right at this point is a must-win for them.
I'm pretty sure.
So they still need to win games to get in.
Yes, they do.
It was out of hand though. Like the Habs were killing the Panthers.
Okay, so the game was already over. So yeah, there's absolutely no reason for him to fight in that situation. Now, let me just, I'll explain this to you the way I explained it to Rand yesterday. When you have a guy, MacKenzie, who's openly challenging you to a fight, regardless if you got suspended, regardless if Paul fought last game because of the hit, you're being challenged by the man that you gave a concussion to. And if you don't stand up for yourself in front of a home crowd and in front of your team, what does the team see? What do both benches see? They see Byron backing down from MacKenzie. So what do both benches think? Well, Florida definitely thinks, okay, so if we lean on these guys, they're going to just back down and they're going to fold, right? So let's keep going. So a lot of it goes into not necessarily like the personal aspect of MacKenzie wanting to kill Byron because of a concussion that he gave him from a hit. A lot of the mentality you're thinking of is what is my team going to think? Is this going to affect the energy or outcome or the momentum of the game? Is it going to affect our race? But you also have to be thinking on the flip side. Wait a minute, we're already killing them. I need to focus now. Your mind shifts, changes to the playoff run and to the next game if that game's already out of hand. There's no reason for me to do this. I didn't have to do it after I immediately hit MacKenzie after when the original hit happened. So, an assistant coach should have sat down with him before the game, I believe, and he said that no coach talked to him and just talked those options through with him. In different situations and in different times of the game. Now, if it's early in the first period and it's still 0-0 and it's a must-win game, well, that makes sense to me to be forced to fight. And it goes back to this code that if somebody challenges you as a man, you have to stand up because we're hockey players and we sacrifice for the team and I'll dive face first in front of a puck for you. And it's that whole mentality. When you're in that team aspect, you are not thinking about your own livelihood. You are just thinking about how you can contribute to a win. And that's how we were conditioned since we were 4 years old, and that's why you see what you see out there. Because in all reality, the old boys club is still running this thing,
right?
And it's going to take a really long time. A couple decades, I think, to change it, even with all the brain injury awareness, I don't see the game of hockey without hitting or fighting. That's just the reality. Now, that being said, you don't have to do it.
Right.
You don't have to do it.
Well, and that's where I want to ask you, because I think there's a couple of things. I got a twofold question for you. So the first question I have is based off one that Tim McAuliffe on Tim and Sid said yesterday. He said he talked to a former player who said that if Paul Byron doesn't fight in that situation, Paul Byron loses respect in his own dressing room. And he talks about it. He meant that in the sense that it was, his own buddies would think he's a coward. And the second thought is, when it comes to the code, I thought the code was to defend the star players, the Lemieux, the Gretzkys, Gordie Howe could defend himself, Marcel Dion, not third liner MacKenzie Weegar.
It's to defend any injustice that you see.
Okay.
So if you're a fighter, if I'm an enforcer, I'm going to defend Patrick Kane the same way I'm going to defend Marcus Kruger.
Okay.
That's just the way it is. You're not thinking about, oh, it's Kruger, and I don't really like that guy because, he didn't invite me to the Swedish dinner last week. You're not thinking about that, right? You're just, when you see injustice, if you're like me, you act. And you're not going to let anybody make these star guys feel uncomfortable, but anybody, for that matter, feel uncomfortable, right? That was the job of the enforcer. The job of the enforcer, which doesn't exist anymore, is to go out there and be skilled enough to play with skilled players so that nobody gets taken advantage of and they feel comfortable enough to be able to put the puck in the net and do their job, because everybody has a different role to play in a team.
Right. Would you have lost respect? Would you have lost respect for Paul Byron if he was on your team and he hadn't fought in that situation?
No.
Okay.
He's giving away 40 pounds. He doesn't fight. No. The game's out of hand. Absolutely not, but, we talk a lot about, there's no repercussions for any actions in the NHL, right? And we talk a lot about the NHL's effectively taken that away from the players to be able to police themselves, right? So then who's policing the game? Is it the refs? Absolutely not. The Zebras are worse than ever this year, And so, okay, is it the NHLPA? Is it the No. Is it the NHL? No. Is it the NHL player safety? Are they handing out like stiff fines and really making these guys think and taking money away from them in the regular season? Because that's what most guys care about because of the 13% escrow. Like, no, that's not happening either. So where is it happening?
Right.
You know, so that's the question, right? Like, they take away this role without thinking about, well, then who's going to enforce that? Who's going to tell these kids who are just so fast, and the rinks are all the same size, and nutrition's better, data tracking is better, training is better. So who's going to tell these kids, number one, either slow down, or number two, implement some vision training so that these guys can like see where they're going, because they're going really fast, and there's a lot of accidental hits happening. You know, like these. I really don't believe Byron, even though like that was a forceful hit. I don't think that he's like, okay, I'm going to go try and knock this guy in the head,
right?
You know,
right.
And knock him out of the game. That's not what these kids are thinking. I'm telling you that right now. And back in my day, we were thinking that. Not necessarily go after his head, but you need to finish every single body check. You need to finish every single slash on the toe cap. You need to stare guys down in warm up, because you need to let them know that they are in for a battle for 60 minutes, right? And then at the 58-minute mark, they might hesitate.
So
you win.
Yeah. So I feel like so much of the conversation revolves around Paul Byron and his need to stick up for himself and his role in all this and his role accepting the fight. I look at the MacKenzie Weegar thing, and I mean, he initiated the fight. He was the one getting revenge for the hit. Everyone seems to forget, and I want to know what you think about this. Do you think this fight even happens if Weegar didn't get his ass kicked by Noel Achari less than a week beforehand?
I'm not sure, but I put it into these terms, okay? You're on the playground when you're a teenager, or even a kid. A guy comes and he catches you the wrong way, and in a sporting event, you get mad and he gets mad, and you guys have a little tussle, and only one of you gets suspended. And the guy that got hurt doesn't get suspended. He stays at school. After you come back from your school suspension, what happens?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to do something. You're either going to have to talk to him, or, you know, usually what happens back in my day is everybody crowds around at the buses and you both fight.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, that's pretty standard with men. It really is.
Mm-hmm. I saw it. Was a part of it.
Now, like, you're saying a lot of things that are the way they are, and I know that.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up a dude too. What's the way it should be?
That's a really good question, man. I honestly, at this point, the way it should be, the way things are going to change is proper education about repetitive head trauma and the risks that these guys are under. Mm-hmm. Until they totally understand the risk of what they're doing to themselves, not only themselves, but the guys that they're playing against, until they truly understand those risks, I don't see anything changing. You know, I really don't see a respect level changing. I don't see. They need to understand, you know, like 3 or more traumatic brain injuries, and you are 80% more susceptible to early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinsonism. You need to understand that, because the NHL and the NHLPA are not telling these guys that. So until they understand, like, how could they gear down or be worried about risks that they don't know, that have been withheld from them? How can they, look at Tom Wilson? Just look at Tom Wilson's comment. And this is why I'm so hard on the NHL Department of Safety, because he's like, well, you know, he's like, now I'm thinking before I make every hit because I don't want to lose another $800,000. Perfect.
Yeah, no kidding.
Happening. That's what should be happening. You should be thinking. You should be watching, right? Like, everybody talks about it being a reaction or emotional game. Guys need to plant their feet, slow down, and understand that, oh man, if I hit this guy in the head, or if I hit if I hit him wrong, I might get hurt, and then I'm at risk for all of these neurodegenerative diseases. And I mean, until that happens, man, I really don't believe that anything will change. These guys need to understand.
Where's the reluctance on the NHLPA and the NHL side? I mean, I get the NHL maybe not wanting to, but where's the NHLPA? Why are they not doing this?
Because most of the players don't want to.
Oh, they don't want to hear about it.
Think about it. Well, think about it. You're a young guy. You just made the NHL. Do you really want to, do you want to put in protocols that are going to hold you out longer after an injury? You're thinking as an athlete, well, if I get hurt and I don't play for an extended period of time, what happens? I lose my job. Okay, so it goes both ways, man. It's a really tricky issue. And as far as suspensions and fines, we bargained for what we got in the CBA. Guys don't want to lose money. That's why you see 1-game suspensions and 2-game standard suspensions for head hits, because any more than that, and what happens? You get into a Jake Voracek situation where he's going to go and appeal it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough, man. It's really tough. But again, it goes back to proper education. I'm talking scare therapy. I'm talking taking a camera to a dementia clinic and talking to a dementia patient and then talking to a family member. How hard is this on you to watch the deterioration? I watched it in my grandmother. It's serious and it's real. These aren't inflated stats that I'm telling you, and I'm not talking about CTE. I'm talking about brain injury, brain damage leads to neurodegenerative diseases, okay, like dementia, like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's, like CTE, a whole host of diseases.
So I guess there just seems to be a lot of pointlessness in the situation, because you're talking about the education, and that's extremely important, but this whole incident, start to finish, was Paul Byron laid a hit. There wasn't malicious intent. He was punished for it. He apologized for it. So, education, I don't think had anything to do with that. It was an accident, and he apologized for it. And then MacKenzie Weegar challenges him because of this unwritten thing that changes and bends with the wind. And he uppercut him, knocked him out, but because of education, checked on him after he knocked him unconscious and gave him a brain injury. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But again, ask MacKenzie if he knows what he's at risk for. The media, man, you guys have a really important role in this. I've talked to numerous media members because they want to start understanding and getting some education on how to ask the proper questions.
Well, okay, so I believe.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that back when you played, because I remember it was pretty limited. The word
we didn't know.
Concussion, I remember.
It was get up, walk it off.
Used it.
Yeah.
Nobody used it. Nobody even said it to us.
Right.
Literally. Even though we had one, they didn't use it. It was crazy, man. And listen, man, that's 2015. That's 4 years ago. That's not that long ago.
I know it's not that long ago, but
crazy.
Is it still an excuse? I have a hard time believing these guys don't understand.
They don't. How could they? So you're playing for a league where you're under their care. When you sign the contract, you get to training camp, you're under their care, right? You can't go. You can't physically go, get up. Number one, you don't have health insurance, okay? You can't go to another doctor. You don't have a family doctor. You have a team doctor.
Right.
So, whatever is digested is digested from the NHL. It's spoon-fed from the NHL. I had to sit through for 15 training camps. I had to sit through a substance abuse behavioral program where they told me the effects of cocaine on my brain. They showed me images of white spots on my brain to do what? To scare me, right? To deter me from using cocaine. They showed me clips of drunk drivers rolling cars. Why didn't they tell me anything about brain injuries? You guys say we didn't know anything, buddy. Do the research, okay? 1933, the first medical person used CTE in the medical literature. It was introduced. It was known as dementia pugilistica, but it was introduced. It was known as punch-drunken boxers, but it was introduced since 1933. You get to 1989 at the height of the NHL and the NFL, and there's no more medical studies being done until 2003. Why is that? The NFL and the NHL work together to suppress information about brain injuries. Do you think they actually want a parent to understand the true risks that they're putting their son or daughter in? by signing them up for hockey? Are you crazy? Absolutely not. We know a lot about brain injuries, okay? 2010, right now, next year, the University of Cincinnati and Joe Clark, they've cut their concussion rate by 80% in the NCAA football. The average is 10, they average 2. How do they do that? That's crazy. Oh, my gosh. What, they've been doing it for 1 year? No, they've been doing it for 9 years now and 9 seasons. And the 1 year when a coach didn't believe in it, they took it out. And what do you think happened? And they do that with like functional baselines and vision training so that you can protect yourself against the hit that you see coming. Right? You can't protect yourself against the hit that you don't see coming. Like, that's an NCAA football. So that's since 2010. I played again. I retired in 2015. Where is the NHL on all of this stuff? IndyCar series. They use accelerometers in their ears attached to a functional baseline. So if a driver gets into a car accident and experiences enough G-forces to cause a brain injury, guess what those accelerometers in his ear tell the computer? He's hurt. Get him some help. That's been over 7 years. So, like, I don't want to hear that there's nothing out there. We didn't know anything. We know a lot about brain injuries and brain damage.
But that's the problem, right?
No, I definitely agree that the powers that be knew more than they were letting on.
Sure.
For sure. What I'm saying is now that it's
right?
But
now that it's out there, surely the players know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, why?
What do you know? What do you know that concussions are bad? Like, so if you're walking into a business, okay, and it's worth $4.8 billion, all right, do you think that this business has an obligation to tell its employees of the risks that they're under of doing their job? Do you think that's fair?
I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. It should
why
be.
Don't they do it? Well, why don't they do it? They still don't do it. You guys think that they do it now. Like, I have friends in the league, man. I know exactly what video they're showing them. The same as a high school video.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, if you're feeling woozy, if you're feeling this, they don't use the words dementia, Alzheimer's. They don't say that.
Wow.
Yes, it is wow. It is a very big wow. And they don't do that. You know why they don't do that? Because the NHL is in litigation, all right? Like, if they concede, if they give up any ground before all these litigation cases are over, then they're conceding that they were wrong. So they won't do it. You know, like 2020 is going to be really interesting when the CBA comes because the players have an opportunity to grab their you-know-what and stand up for themselves if they truly want to look at this. Like, if they truly want to look at the risks that they're under doing their job. And I'll tell you, man, it took me 7 months after retirement after numbing out all those symptoms and stuff to actually, like, stand in the mirror and assess the state of my brain. And it's not an easy thing to do.
I don't know.
A lot of guys right now just don't want to look at it. You know? They'll just keep playing.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works, but when it comes to 2020, like, will you be involved in any way?
No.
I know you're retired. But
No. I mean, the way I'm involved is on Twitter. You don't think guys follow me and DM me? And I've sent over 40 guys to these clinics. I don't need to say anything about it. Right? Like, I'm not that type of guy. I don't need to gloat. I don't need to name drop. Like, I help these guys anonymously because that's how they want to be helped. Because it's such a fear-based society, hockey, that there'll be repercussions if their organization finds out, even though you're not under their care. Like, guys need to understand that, like Paul Byron, he should be filing, if it was in Montreal, I don't think he can, but if any guy and any player that's listening to this right now, if you've had a concussion in the United States of America, you need to look at the statute of limitation and you need to file for a workers' comp case. If you don't, you will be left with the bills. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've spent in 3 years. The NHLPA denies my insurance. They deny my claims on pre-existing conditions. So file for a workers' comp case.
Wow.
You know, so that you'll get the proper treatment. Dude, this runs so deep.
Yeah.
So deep.
Well, you could feel it. I could feel it hearing you talk about it.
Well, buddy, I'm gonna listen. The next year of this, okay, is to help you guys and help parents understand who they're actually getting their information from and who these doctors are that work directly with these sports leagues. Okay, there's 40 doctors in the world who make our consensus statements for return to play protocol from brain injuries. Not only professional athletes, but kids. all right? And they have very strong relationships to the NFL and the NHL, all right? Over half of them.
Wow.
So, like, we need to start understanding who we're getting our information from, and we need to look elsewhere. We need to look elsewhere to people that don't have a stake in the game, that aren't serving sports medicine and are serving athletes. Should be called athlete medicine, not sports medicine. You know, and I'm sorry I got off a little off topic, but it applies. It applies to this. It applies to the code, because I'm telling you, when guys truly understand the risks they are under of doing their job, just playing a hockey game, then they will. I really believe, and that's when it will start to curve. That's when you will see guys holding up. You know, that's when you'll see guys like, you know, TJ Oshie. He has a little bit of knowledge because his dad's suffering from Alzheimer's. The other day, I saw a picture of him on Instagram. He was holding guys back from a scrum because there was a guy on the ice. Like, you'll start seeing that stuff happening more and more, because the guys will start understanding, like, holy shit, man. Like, if I want to keep playing, I need this guy across from me to be healthy enough to keep playing, because without this guy, there's no league. Like, and how long do I want to play?
Yeah.
You know, and do I want to be optimized? You know, like, that's what vision training can do. That's what the University of Cincinnati is doing. Like, forget about even baselines. Let's talk about function, you know. Let's talk about performance, you know. Like, if your hand-eye coordination and processing speed is slowed down due to traumatic brain injuries, that affects the product that fans are seeing on the ice. That affects GMs and owners. Less man games lost. This works for everybody. But again, I'll keep beating this drum, because the NHL is its own worst enemy. They will keep fighting. They'd rather spend millions of dollars fighting guys like me in the Monador estate and the Weegar estate and Nick Boynton. They'd rather spend millions to fight ex-players than to just admit it, say sorry, and move on.
Mm-hmm. So,
you know, and start putting those millions into functional baselines and into proper education.
So, Dan, I guess my next question would be, and because, by the way, what I've found, what you've said has been very powerful. In the way that the league is structured. So last night, okay, I'm not sure if you caught the Leaf game. We're gigantic Leaf fans, but we were watching a game, and in the first period, Mitch Marner gets leveled by Radko Gudas. It's a clean hit, but Mitch Marner wasn't looking. Now, thankfully, Mitch Marner's pretty slippery. He takes the hit well, bounces back up, and he's fine. And you have someone like Brian Burke who goes on television right after that, 5 minutes later, and says, I can't believe there wasn't a response from the Leafs by this. How can they allow this to happen? When you see a situation like this, where it's a clean hit and that's part of the game, A, does it deserve a response? B, are we creating this issue in the media by perpetuating that stereotype?
Some people are, most definitely. And no, it doesn't need a response. Like, even in my day, we didn't respond to guys who made a clean hit. Like, that's not injustice. It's part of the game.
Right. It seems like clean hits now, big hits anyway, are so rare that when they do happen, people are like, oh, we better fight about this. You know? Yeah,
well, it's an opportunity, right, to give fans and to give the fan base that the NHL is so fearful of losing what they want, which is blood. You know, like, literally, man. They sold the game on violence, hate, and rivalries. Like, they sold me the game as a kid through Rock'em Sock'em. I used to line those things up. You know, and to Brian Burke's point, he's a dinosaur. You will not see him in 10 years unless he changes his narrative. People aren't going to put up with this. This is only year one, and people are already starting to get agitated. You know, like, there was never a pushback like this before when a guy would get knocked out in a fight. That was just normal. Now people are like, ooh. Why are they saying ooh? And why does it make them uncomfortable? Because they know the risks that this guy is under. That's why I always say it always goes back to education. Like, they truly understand. My followers understand the risks because I talk about it every day.
Who do you want to hear from? Like, whose opinion do you value?
Young guys. Guys that just got out of the league. Guys that don't have that mindset. You know, I understand. Like, that's what the game was built on. I get it. I get it that people think I'm a hypocrite, but I don't agree. You know, I don't agree because of what I have learned. So again, everybody's like, well, you're a hypocrite because of the way you played. Well, listen, how could I change the way I played if all of this information was withheld from me? Now I retired. I'm reading all of the medical papers. I'm reading the 297 emails. I'm getting stuff leaked to me. Now I know what they did, and they lied to me, and they lied to hundreds and thousands of other men, but these men are at home suffering in silence instead of, talking about it and telling their story. But there's more and more men and hockey players coming out, telling their story, telling about candid stories about the struggles that they've had. And, the more guys that do that, I think the more current players will listen. And a lot of people may assume that I hate hockey or that I want collision sports like football and hockey to no longer exist. That couldn't be further from the truth. But I'll put it in this context. Like, if hockey and football didn't exist today and we made up a game today, would there be bare knuckle fighting and full body contact in hockey?
Excuse me, probably not.
I doubt it. I doubt it very highly. So if that's the temperature of the climate today of society, why aren't we adhering to that?
Right. And that brings me to my next question for you. And you've been so great with your time, and we so appreciate having you on, man, because this has been
good, man.
Amazing to hear. I guess my final question for you would be, how do you think we will look back on this era in 20 years? And I'm talking about not just the last 5 years. I'm talking about the last 20 years of we knew, everybody kind of knew, we went from concussions are bad to more specifically concussions do this and this and this and this. How do you think we're going to look back on this time? And quite frankly, on the commissioner and the people that work under him?
I think we're going to thank them. I'm going to personally thank him. I feel like thanking them already.
Really?
The NHL is their own worst enemy. Yeah, they are their own worst enemy. And people think that I want to do this to change hockey. Like, that could not be further from the truth. I do it to protect my friends who are still in the league so that they have the information. Concussion is a human issue, all right? It affects a lot more people than just the 7 million NHL fans and their players. It affects the veteran community. It affects firefighters, police officers, women of domestic violence, soccer players, rugby players. I mean, all types of athletes, child abuse victims. That's who I want to get to. I'm just I've said this a million times, my platform and my background's in hockey. I have a unique insight into, what happens on the ice. And so I use the platform the same way the NHL used me and lied to me. And I'm using them to get to millions of other people and communities, And so right now I could say thank you to Gary and the NHL. As for however long they choose to fight this, I will choose to educate. And so, again, thank you.
Okay.
You guys are helping me.
Well, hey, we appreciate your time. I literally woke up and messaged Dan this morning. I was thinking about it in the shower at 4 a.m. before I got up for the morning show. So
I was going to say, you wake up at 4 a.m.?
I do, yeah, unfortunately. It's not the best time to be awake, but it's a fun time to do a radio show. So anyway, Dan, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. If you want to follow Dan, it's Carbomb1313. I got that right? And we follow each other.
Yeah, Carbomb Boom 13.
Yeah,
you got it.
That's it. Carbon Boom 13. Thank you so much, Dan. This is not going to be the last time, okay?
Yeah, hopefully not. And sorry for talking so much, boys, but there's
there's
a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot to know, and that's really not even the half of it.
Well, I think we'd like to cover more ground the next time, and the whole. We're glad you talked because there's nothing worse than having a guest that doesn't talk, man.
Oh, I hear that.
Hey, brother.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate the combo. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
Thanks,
Take
man.
care.
Take care.
Bye.
Wow.